Go ahead, take it away.
So again, I'm Maggie Sheffer. I teach at Castlemont High School, and my inquiry question for last year was focused on figuring out for myself what close reading actually meant and looked like in a classroom, and then the other question of how to actually impart that skill to students. Like Claire said, it took me a really long time to figure out both what my routine data source would be and how to actually change my teaching to make it relevant to this question. And what I started with was just bringing in any data from my classroom where students were reading a text, and it was non-example data, data that frustrated me and that I knew I didn't really feel comfortable with. And you can actually see on the inside page, I guess the third printed page, that was my first data source, was student annotations of a text. And it was not at all like what students ended up doing, but I used that data to figure out what students were already doing when I asked them to closely read a text, and it helped me see that they weren't actually doing what I thought they were doing at all. So I did a few rounds of analyzing student annotations before a colleague suggested to me using leveled questions, and then my inquiry shifted again, and I had a new regular data source, because what I realized then was that I was going to try a new style of teaching in which students asked questions, had discussions, and did writing about the questions they wrote. And then all of a sudden I had a eureka moment where, oh, I just need to have those 3 steps of the process become my regular data source to see again how it's working. So I started collecting the questions that students were writing. Initially, I thought I was going to record their discussions, but that turned out to be way too crazy to even try, so I had them take notes on their discussions and then their final writing pieces. And that was able to be a regular data source for me over the course of about a 6-week unit. So I didn't expand my collection over the course of the whole year. I really only did it for that one unit, and I would collect that data source several times a week. So I guess what you can learn from my struggle is that I had to look at a non-example first. Like, I didn't have the perfect data source that showed me what I wanted to know, but that it changed as my teaching changed, and that was totally okay and really nice for me to be able to compare one data source that wasn't working to a later data source that showed a change in student learning. But that I didn't end up finding that magical data source that stayed the same throughout the course of the year and that I was able to collect on a daily basis. Does that help?
Very much so.
And then by the end, I was really happy with it, but at this point last year, I had no clue what it was going to look like at all. I only knew what I didn't like seeing. I didn't know what I wanted to see.
You really struggled. I remember your question was really big, and you gradually narrowed and narrowed and narrowed.
Mm-hmm. But looking at data that really was frustrating to me actually really helped me, and I loved that Mills gave me the permission to examine that data closely and then say, okay, never looking at that again. It's not going to be part of my final presentation at all. Instead, I'm going to do this. So that really taking the time with it is really helpful.